Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's edition of the Client Enrichment Series, Managing and Right-Sizing Your Portfolio. My name is Eric Fulton. I am a program manager in the Public Building Service Office of Client Strategy. More importantly, I am your host for today's session. Before we dive into the presentation, I just want to thank everyone for attending the Client Enrichment Series. This is our first session in more than a year. Also, our first session since the Public Building Service reorganized in October of 2025. So on behalf of PBS, I want to thank everybody for your partnership and your patience through the reorganization process. We've tried to maintain clear channels of communication over the past several months. Today's session is a part of that. You can find out more information about the PBS reorganization, including a comprehensive list of points of contact on our website. And a CES member, I think, will also post the link into the chat box here, just so you have it for your reference. If you have attended a client enrichment series in the past, welcome back. If this is your first time, I know many of us are in new places and new roles. Welcome aboard. CES sessions are a way for us at PBS to engage with our customers on topics that contribute to the effective management of your real estate and workplace programs. And today's topic is certainly at the top of that list. Moving forward, we anticipate hosting sessions like these about once a month. Future sessions will include additional information on the PBS reorganization, our new business lines, how they operate, and how they work with each of you. We'll also be hosting sessions on critical and emergent topics as they come aboard, as well as recurring subjects we've done in the past, such as reimbursable services and water quality management. More additional information on future topics is on our website, and we will have some information at the end of this session as well. The Client Enrichment Series is open to any federal employee involved in the planning, management, execution of real estate. And by attending today's session, you are automatically added to our email list. So congratulations, you will be hearing from us in the future about upcoming sessions. And again, you can visit our website, www.gsa.gov/CES, to see our upcoming schedule and view past sessions as well. So let's move on and get started with today's presentation. We have three PBS subject matter experts with us today that are going to be presenting on managing and right-sizing your portfolio, and there they are on the screen. So today we're going to be hearing from Carrie Whitehouse. Carrie is GSA's National Planning Program Manager with over 26 years of federal service, including 8 years in strategic space planning. As the project manager who developed the space intake portal process, we'll be hearing more about that later, she specializes in helping agencies optimize and right-size their real estate portfolios through GSA's innovative planning tools and processes. We also have Leslie Lamar Rushing with us today. Leslie is National Client Lead and Senior Strategist on the Real Estate Optimization Team in the Office of Client Strategy, serving in both client-facing and program management roles. Through 17 years of service with GSA, she has led initiatives in key areas including workplace innovation, service delivery, occupancy planning, employee development, and communication. And finally, we also have Katrina Scarpato here. Katrina is a senior asset manager in the strategy and investment division of the PBS Office of Portfolio Management. She has over 21 years of experience with GSA, currently serves as the Space Management Program Lead in Portfolio, supporting portfolio optimization and strategic space management initiatives. All right, before we formally begin, just a couple of housekeeping notes for a great presentation. We've automatically muted everyone's audio but our presenters. That's to preserve the audio quality of our presentation today. I will point out, in Zoom, there is a chat pod and a Q&A pod. These serve two different purposes, and I do want to just explain that. So the chat pod, if you are having some technical difficulties, have an administrative question, put that in the chat, and one of our CES team members will be there to assist you as best that they can. We will also post links and helpful information as the presentation moves on. But if you have questions about the subject matter, and I know that you do, we ask that those questions about portfolio, about space planning, go into the Q&A pod. We have subject matter experts working behind the scenes as well. They will review the questions that come in and address all that we can in the time that we have. Additionally, we may pull some of those out and ask our presenters live during the presentation. Most importantly, we are able to export all of the questions that are asked, those we answered and those we have yet to answer, and we will take those back after the session, address all of them, and post them in a formal Q&A document that we will post to our website along with the session recording and slide deck for posterity. So you will have that information available to you. So once again, subject matter questions, please use the Q&A pod. Questions about audio, technical difficulties, put that right in the chat. I do want to note, I am sure that some of you, many of you, have specific questions about your agency, about your locations, maybe about a project. If you have those specific questions, we do want to address them, but I want to encourage you to find the right point of contact through our www.gsa.gov/contact-PBS website. We want to keep the questions and the information here as applicable to as many people as possible. So we do want to address your specific questions, but you can find the right person in the right business line through www.gsa.gov/contact-PBS if you have a specific question. All right, so with that out of the way, once again, I do want to thank and welcome everyone for being here today, and I am going to turn over the presentation to Carrie. She is going to go over the agenda, and we will formally begin today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So today we're going to walk through several key areas on how GSA will work with you to manage your real estate portfolio. So here's a look at the agenda for today's session. First, we'll discuss prioritizing the right occupancy projects and the approach for identifying and prioritizing your occupancy projects. Next, we'll cover working together on targeted occupancies, outlining the project lifecycle and the process for submitting your requirements. And then we'll move on to how GSA can help you with your underutilized or excess space and the strategies we can partner on to help you optimize that space. Then we will share some keys to successful occupancy planning and your role in that process. And then after the main content, we will provide you with important resources to bookmark and then conclude with a Q&A session. So as Eric just explained, please use that Q&A pod as we move throughout the presentation. We know you have probably a lot of questions, and if we don't get your questions today, we will make those available later. Go ahead and move to the next slide. Thank you. So before I hand it over to Leslie, who's going to talk through prioritizing the right occupancy projects, I want to acknowledge two different occupancy management efforts that we're engaging you on this year. So first, we understand that expiring leases are top of mind to a lot of you, and we are in the midst of working to address near-term lease expirations for FY26 and FY28. And you're not going to see changes to your services as we work to secure and maintain your occupancies. And addressing this backlog of lease expirations is really critical, and it is an occupancy triage of sorts. It is not occupancy planning. And this spring, we will be taking a fresh look at true strategic occupancy planning and prioritization. And this will inform the work that we will engage you on moving forward. This is the first topic that we will discuss today. And now I'm going to hand it over to Leslie to kick us off.
Great. Thanks so much, Carrie. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today to discuss a fresh, consistent approach to partnering with you on space occupancy planning and projects. Top of mind for PBS has been, in today's budget-constrained and resource-constrained environment, how do we ensure that the government executes the right projects at the right time, those projects that address the highest needs and provide the best value to the American people? And this has long been part of PBS's mission. It's just in our new nationally consolidated structure, we're going to approach things a bit differently and with more consistency. Next slide, please. So what's changing? In the past, lease expirations, and when we had them, federal occupancy expirations, used to drive the overwhelming majority of space planning activities between our agencies, and in turn, drive the actual space occupancy projects we executed. On a broad scale, PBS is now evaluating the portfolio of potential space occupancy projects using more factors. For example, we're looking at existing, expiring, and new occupancies more in terms of risks and opportunities now. We want to elevate projects with operational or mission risks to our customer agencies, like when you have new or expanded politically sensitive mission that needs a new space. Also, as you may have heard from your client strategists, PBS is prioritizing requirements and projects related to building disposals. This addresses administration priorities, financial and schedule risks, and in some cases, safety and compliance risks. When looking for opportunities, Use It enables us to look at location-specific space utilization now. And it's not just about reducing square footage for the sake of improving utilization. We're evaluating the financial cost associated with each occupancy's underutilization and using that as a critical data point to indicate where's the right occupancy work to undertake. We're also looking at opportunities to consolidate operations, co-locate agencies, seek affordable markets and submarkets, and so on. And sometimes the best financial opportunity is to lock in cost advantageous rates in your current location. If you're thinking, that doesn't sound new to me, or a lot of that sounds familiar to me, I definitely want to acknowledge that some regions, some strategists, and some customers were already using many of these approaches to planning. We're now bringing a more nationally consistent approach to identifying high opportunity projects to target, where it makes the most sense for the government to invest human and financial resources. Next slide, please. So the very nature of prioritizing means that some things will be higher profile and some will have to be at the lower end. For the agreed upon higher risk and higher opportunity occupancies, PBS will continue to engage you on full requirements development and invite you to submit those requirements in our new portal, which you'll hear about more in a little bit. We'll conduct analysis and engage full PBS resources like workplace expertise to help ensure Use It compliance. We'll develop tailored housing solutions and formalize project parameters in a client project agreement that you'll sign and approve. And all of this will sound familiar to those of you who've been in our customer real estate organizations for a few years. This is the full strategic planning treatment that we've been doing for quite some time, and we'll continue to operate this way for those targeted locations. Next slide, please. For the projects or opportunities that are not expected to yield the greatest benefits and are not top priorities for your agency or PBS, we will verify with you that those locations can maintain current occupancy and be reevaluated again in the future. We'll be checking with you to see if there are risks or opportunities that PBS just didn't know about in our initial analysis. For this lower opportunity chunk of your space portfolio, it's prudent for the government to limit our investment of human and financial resources. We'll use simplified documentation, and these remain in place occupancies will not get individual CPAs. You won't need to enter information specific to these occupancies into our portal. Rather, we'll partner with you to programmatically agree to streamline project parameters, and then GSA will execute our agreed upon solution. We're working on more automated tools and batched approaches to try to expedite continuing occupancy documentation. And has always been the case, if or when a planned strategy busts, we'll work with you to pivot to a new solution. Now, it will take some time for the government to address the biggest rocks or the biggest opportunities before we can get to the smaller ones. And PBS asks for your partnership and patience as we help you optimize your highest impact locations first and seek highest savings for the taxpayer first. We will engage you early and often to make sure we're getting this plan right. And next slide, please. This is my last one. I do just want to acknowledge that we expect you to reap several benefits related to this approach, where we're securing upfront alignment between our agencies on occupancy strategies. We'll be improving your utilization in a targeted way, where your agency and the taxpayer should save the most money the fastest. This will also help with realistic budgeting. While inevitably some plans will hit snags and need to pivot, for the vast majority, you will know early on the level of budget you need and whether or not you need to be planning for a move for any specific location. It should also lead to human resource efficiency. Your real estate teams will know the level of detail PBS needs and requirements at the beginning of our engagement. And we're looking to greatly reduce those instances where your agency and PBS partners on fairly detailed requirements only to not pursue a relocation or construction project. Let's save that energy to better focus our planning resources. This should also help with timely partnership between our agencies. There'll be fewer requirements to complete, so there should be fewer requirements delays. And in theory, this leads to fewer unplanned extensions, holdovers, and stopgap actions, all of which drive up rental rates. Again, this is all for our strategic planning for occupancies expiring after the current backlog. This is true strategic planning with you after our current triage effort. FY26 is a transitional year, and we acknowledge that up front. But potentially as early as next fiscal year, we want to be looking at opportunities that soft terms in our leases present to the government. We want to manage to the end of firm contractual obligations and seek cost savings and consolidations with the biggest impacts, even when those are in the soft term. We have a lot of work in front of us with these near-term expirations, but this is where PBS wants to go with strategic planning to be able to leverage those soft-term flexibilities to secure the best savings. I just laid a lot on you. Just please know PBS will partner with you. There's a lot more detail to get into when you get into the weeds on this, but your agency's client strategist will reach out in the coming weeks with more of those details and to get clarity on your agency's top space priorities and to launch the discussion on strategies for your agency's specific portfolio of occupancies. With that, I will turn it back to Carrie.
Thank you, Leslie. So now let's talk about how we can work together on your targeted occupancy projects. So this section will focus on the partnership between your agency and GSA to ensure successful space planning and project execution. We're going to cover the key steps in the process and how we collaborate throughout your occupancy project. Successful occupancy projects require close collaboration between your agency and GSA. And I will start by walking you through our project lifecycle and process. Next slide. The GSA space project lifecycle consists of 5 main phases. The typical timeline for an occupancy project will depend on the occupancy and housing solution for the project. In the identification phase, we will work with you to outline your high-level space needs for the project. And this phase is really critical in setting the baseline for the project moving forward. It begins when you submit your requirements into the PBS space intake portal. And then once the project parameters and space strategy are agreed upon, they're finalized in that client project agreement, or known also as a CPA. And we'll go over this phase in more detail throughout this presentation. Once the CPA is approved, the project moves into the initiation phase, where a project manager is assigned to work with you to draft the technical specifications for your project. In the third phase, the project manager works to finalize those requirements, develops a schedule, and provides an updated budget. And then during project execution, the final requirements package is set, a request for proposal is issued, your agency approves the OA and provides RWA funding prior to contract award, and then the project is awarded and construction begins. And that last phase is closeout, and here the final inspections are conducted, punch list items are completed, the OA is finalized to begin those rent payments, and GSA Facilities Management administers the occupancy. So in the next slide, and really the remainder of this section, we're going to look closer at the identification phase. So I'm going to walk you through this process map, which really outlines the key elements of identification. And I'm going to cover these in more detail as we move throughout the presentation. So in our first section, Leslie just went over the occupancy planning and prioritization process. I want to outline how we take that annual discussion and then move forward on those occupancies. So let's imagine during those discussions, we look at 100 of your agency's occupancies. We then work together to determine the most effective path for each. In this hypothetical scenario, for about 20 of those occupancies, we define them as those targeted occupancy projects. And this means we're going to conduct a detailed intake of your specific requirements, develop a customized solution, and then guide it through that entire project lifecycle. Then for, let's say, the other 80 occupancies, we would move forward with a programmatic approach. And that allows us to work with you more broadly, focusing on maintaining the existing arrangements and leveraging the standard stay-in-place solutions. And this ensures your operations remain seamless and allow us to manage your portfolio effectively and efficiently. So once we've identified and prioritized those space needs, we'll start gathering the requirements on those hypothetical 20 targeted occupancy projects, and we'll send you a project-specific link to the space intake portal where you will submit your requirements. So one note, you may have a new requirement or an expansion that comes up outside your occupancy planning discussions. And if you do, you can notify GSA through a new requirement request form, and you'll receive a link to the portal. I will talk more about that here today. After receiving your submission, we work with your agency to refine and validate your strategic requirements. And that involves a client strategist working directly with you to refine those requirements, conducting a comprehensive review of the submission, assisting you in meeting occupancy and utilization goals or metrics, and determining the housing strategy for your project. So next, we then reach formal agreement on your project parameters, and a completed CPA is shared with your agency. And your agency acknowledges the project parameters by approving that CPA, setting the foundation for successful project execution. Finally, we will then transition to project management. So with the CPA finalized, a project manager is assigned to lead project implementation, and it transitions the project from that identification phase into the next phase of the project lifecycle. So throughout the process and the project, we maintain open communication and partnership with your agency. And so I did mention that your requirements are going to be submitted through the space intake portal. So let's take a look at what that is. We started developing the portal this past summer, and we did have some individual soft launch testing sessions with several agencies to ensure the system was efficient and understandable. Based on the feedback we received, we made some changes to that portal. The space intake portal is how you will submit your initial space requirements to GSA, kicking off the strategic planning process for your space needs. Which projects go through that space intake will be based on those occupancy partnership discussions between GSA and your agency, and it includes those targeted occupancies, new requirements, and expansion needs. We developed this portal for two main reasons: to make the submission process simpler for you, and to help us collect complete high-quality information in one place. This information allows us to determine a housing strategy and find the best space solution for your agency. So federal real estate decision makers and anyone that they authorize can submit space requirements. And to ensure the right people are sent the link to submit the requirements, our client strategist will partner with you to identify the authorized points of contact for your projects. The portal is built as a structured survey with specific questions and the ability to upload supporting documents. So you don't need special system access, just that unique link that we will send you for your project. Next slide, please. So the space intake portal is designed to be a dynamic, kind of operating like a choose your own adventure style to perfectly match your agency's unique requirements. It avoids a one-size-fits-all approach by adapting the questions you see based on the specific space needs and unique requirements that you indicate. So for example, if you have special space like a lab, you would indicate this, and the portal would then ask additional questions about that special space needs. However, if you only need office space, the portal will skip questions about special space. This adaptability ensures an efficient and streamlined experience, saving you time and effort. The bottom line is that every agency's journey through the portal is going to be different because your space needs are different. We'll talk more about the information that you will need for submission here soon, but first let's talk about accessing the portal. There are two ways you might access the portal depending on your situation. For new space requirements, your agency will initiate the process by filling out that new requirement request form I mentioned on our space intake website. And a new requirement is defined as space that is not currently in GSA's real estate inventory, or a request for an expansion of existing space in our inventory. And this definition includes requests related to return to office, returning lease delegations, brand new space needs, a new office, for example, that you need to stand up. For existing occupancies, GSA and your agency will identify those targeted occupancy projects that we discussed, and that will then go through the portal. So in both of those cases, GSA will send you a unique link for that project when we're ready to begin the planning process. So when you receive your unique link, that email will also include something that's called a space intake number, or SIP. This is your unique identifier during the identification phase of your project. So let's take a look now on how to submit those new requirement requests that I talked about. So to submit a new requirement request, you will complete that request form found on the external site. The key information required includes your location of the space need. So what city do you need it in, what market, the agency and the bureau name, the authorized point of contact's name and email, the timing or desired readiness date, so when you need to be in that space, and then a short description of that space need. So if you have an expansion, you will also be asked to provide the existing occupancy agreement number. If you have a requirement for space that is due to return to office mandates and you're looking for a shared space solution, please include that in the short description section of the request. We currently have a large number of these smaller shared space requests, and space sharing really only works if we have the space available. We are looking to work with agencies that will provide underutilized space to meet the demands of all of these requests that we've received. And I'll talk a little bit more about that too today. So if you have a return to office need of more than 10 locations, please reach out to the client strategist assigned to your agency to see if supply is even available. This is going to save you some time. Additionally, our website will indicate if you have no supply available for space sharing. Since the portal launched, we know many of you have had kind of urgent new space requests. And so to ensure that we can respond quickly to those new requirement requests and provide you with timely access to the portal, we will be sending you unique links every Thursday. Your client strategist will reach out to you for any clarifications and to confirm the authorized point of contact email for that unique link. So all of that was in regards to kind of new requirements. And let's go ahead and walk you through submitting your requirements into the portal. So when you get that unique link, whether it's for a new requirement or for any of those targeted occupancies that we discussed, you will want to gather all of the requirements prior to submission. It will just help you move through the process. To help you prepare and understand what you might need for your submission, a table and a downloadable cheat sheet is available on our website. The portal captures the strategic data that you would typically see in a client project agreement. So if you are used to CPAs, the information won't seem new to you. As mentioned, the portal is dynamic and it's going to ask different questions depending on how you answer the question. So you may not need everything that is in that table. We do gather requirements on key contacts, on space square footage needs, and projected occupancy and utilization. We also want you to identify any unique needs, such as security, operational or access needs, and location or space constraints. A few examples of that would be if you have shared space restrictions, if you require a backup generator, if you have setback requirements, and of course, if you don't have any of these, you would not indicate that you do, and the portal will not ask you follow-on questions. So the system does allow for easy upload of necessary supporting documentation, and there's several key areas along the way where you have a chance to upload documents. And then also at the end of the survey, if there's anything that you want to upload that you want GSA to know about your project. This data that we gather in the Space Intake Portal is really essential for GSA to develop a housing solution to fit your needs. Next slide. All right, so once your requirements have been submitted through the portal, a copy of that will be sent to several people. The identified point of contact that you put in there, the portal submitter, some cases it may be the same person, and then also the assigned GSA client strategist. So if you do need to make changes to what you've submitted, that client strategist is your point of contact, and they will gather and capture those updates in that CPA. We will review your requirements, and the client strategist will reach out to begin discussions with you on your project. And so if you're an executive level agency, we will evaluate your requirements against the Use It Act and the OMB Memo 25-25 occupancy and utilization metrics. The client strategist will provide you with a housing solution and also refined requirements in a CPA. And the goal is to drive solutions that meet your mission, ensure optimal utilization, and then leverage existing spaces. So before I talk more about the CPA and kind of the next steps after that, I am going to hand it over to Katrina, who's going to talk through potential housing solutions, which are really more dynamic today than they were previously. Katrina?
Thanks, Carrie. As Carrie mentioned, I'm here to discuss the various housing solutions GSA can offer to meet your space needs. You can see in the PowerPoint slide here, we categorize those solutions to a few main areas. The first one is the shared space, and this is a great option for agencies. It allows 2 or more agencies to occupy space in the same building. There's one critical detail about this, and Carrie did mention this earlier. This is really dependent on supply. If we don't have supply, we can't match. So we need to really ask for agencies to, if the supply is there, to let us know so that we have that information on hand. This can range from fully shared spaces to separate work areas, but always maintaining agency-specific operational control where necessary. And this solution probably ties more into what you're used to hearing, space match program or commercial co-working options, which typically target much smaller needs. So we typically look for usually less than 20 seats for this type of solution. The next one is probably the one that you're most familiar with as you've been working with GSA, is our ability to backfill into existing vacancies in our inventory. And this is both owned or existing leases that we might have a vacancy for. For urgent long-term needs and the space is owned or an existing lease with significant term left, we are going to want to backfill those where we can and optimize the space to the best of our ability. For short-term or maybe even emergency needs, we will consider buildings where we have an active disposition planned. But again, it's only for short-term and emergency needs, and these are often take the space as is, no investments into that property or into that space. We also have co-locations and consolidations, and this is taking a look at the space utilization, especially looking at the underutilized space, the use it data, and working with you to find opportunities to co-locate your agency with another or consolidate multiple existing occupancies you may have. So it's taking a look at that use it data and looking for those opportunities and see where they exist. And then finally, where we don't have vacant space or we don't have any co-location or space match opportunities, our next solution will be to seek a new lease, which I think most of you are familiar with, the new lease process and what that process consists of. So we have a couple different options that we take into consideration when looking at your requirements. Not done in a vacuum. These are consulted and they are discussed. So there's more to it than just what you see here. And then with that, I'm actually going to turn it back to Carrie to discuss the next steps once a housing solution is identified.
Thanks, Katrina. It was a good chance for me to get some water. So I appreciate all going through those housing solutions for us. So as I mentioned, the refined requirements, including those housing solutions, will be captured in a CPA. So once we have made all those, refine the requirements, discuss the housing solution, capture it all in the CPA, and that will show you your current space details, if applicable. It'll explain the identified housing strategy. It describes the basics of your space needs. It lists the goals and requirements for the project. And the CPA is a formal document that shows that all parties agree on what your agency requires in terms of space. And when you approve that CPA, you're saying that the information represents what you need for that project. Now, the CPA doesn't represent a financial commitment, but it offers high-level cost data that can assist you in initial space budgeting. And once you approve the CPA, a project manager is assigned to work with you and finalize that project. And at that time, the project delivery team will seamlessly incorporate any necessary updates to the project, ensuring that your evolving needs are continuously and professionally addressed. Next slide. All right, so we just discussed your future needs. Now let's shift our focus to your existing space and how we can partner to help you meet your occupancy and utilization goals. So in this section, we're going to walk through the two main paths to get assistance with space that's currently underutilized. There are two primary ways that we can assist you with your underutilized space. So first, if your space is no longer needed in the market, you may be able to release all or part of your space. And so to do this, certain requirements must be met based on our pricing policy. The space needs to be marketable. The occupancy agreement must be cancelable. And if you're in a leased occupancy, you must be at least 16 months into your OA term. So if your occupancy meets these criteria, you can submit a release of space directly through our PBS Oasis system. This is not new, and many of you are familiar with this. But just as one example, if your agency, let's say, is consolidating 2 existing locations to increase your occupancy, and one location is no longer going to be needed, it meets those criteria that I just went over to release, that you can would just submit your space release request through that PBS Oasis system when you are ready to release the space. However, there may be times where you're not ready to, or you're unable to release the space. So we want to actively partner with you to provide actionable recommendations for optimization. And so to initiate this, you simply need to notify GSA through our underutilized space identification portal. This is new. It will ask you specific questions about the space to give a full understanding of your needs. And then once submitted, we will partner with you to recommend potential strategies to optimize the space. So for example, if you have underutilized space in a large lease location, you still need a large portion of that space. Your agency doesn't have any shared space restrictions at this location, and you want to partner with GSA to determine the options you have. You would then submit your space into that underutilized space identification portal. And then one note here, please, you should only be submitting underutilized space in GSA controlled, leased, and owned facilities. So if you own a building or control a building through maybe like a lease delegation, you would not put that in through the portal. So now we kind of walked through how to identify that underutilized space and work with us. Let's talk through what some of those potential optimization strategies could look like. So when you submit that underutilized space to GSA, some possible optimization strategies that we will discuss with you include space sharing, consolidation, and even space releases. So I'll talk a little bit about space sharing. And these options include offering your underutilized space as supply for space match program. This program provides space for one agency's employees to sit in another agency's assigned occupancy. And as I mentioned earlier, we have seen a significant number of requests for space sharing, typically fewer than 5 people due to return to office mandates. So we have a lot of people that need seats, and to meet the demand, we need seats to put these agencies in. And if you have underutilized workspace that you can space share, this program would benefit you by improving the occupancy and utilization of your current space. It does lower your rental expenses, and it helps maintain your current space until long-term plans are finalized. The next optimization strategy is a potential consolidation. And so it would evaluate your space in the market to identify, oh, sorry, I think we might have moved forward a little bit. There we go. Okay, thank you. So consolidation strategy evaluates your space in the market to identify your agency's multiple occupancies and then combines them into one optimized space. We also may discuss the ability to release your space. So we can help to evaluate your underutilized space and provide possible solutions and costs to make your space marketable for a release. So you may not know if you can release the space, and that's okay. We can help you figure out if you can, and if there are any costs to doing so. There may also be some other optimization strategies that are available, and it will really just depend on the other opportunities that may arise. And so together we'll partner to determine that best strategy. All right, we can move to the next slide now, please. So this next section we'll just talk about some keys to successful occupancy planning. All right, achieving a successful outcome in occupancy planning is really a partnership, and your agency's engagement is key. The slide highlights your role in making the process as smooth and effective as possible. So first, submitting comprehensive space requirements with detailed and complete information up front is crucial. And this is why we have that cheat sheet available on our site so you know what it is that you need to provide. And this proactive approach minimizes the need for a lot of back and forth clarifications, ensuring we have necessary data immediately to identify and secure the best possible solution for you. Engaging GSA early for your planning needs. So we're going to be engaging you early. We just want you to also engage with us early. The sooner you communicate your space needs proactively, the more options GSA has to meet those needs. And then finally, we ask that you continue partnering with us to identify opportunities for efficiency and align your space with your current and future workforce needs. And by leveraging our joint expertise, we can maximize operational effectiveness and successfully meet your space utilization goals. All right, next slide. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a list of valuable resources to support your ongoing occupancy planning and portfolio management. I know we've talked about several of these as we've gone through, and we've put them on the next slide here. Yep. So we highly recommend bookmarking these as references. They are foundational resources for understanding GSA's occupancy planning and requirements process. The portfolio planning website is a one-stop shop to access resources discussed today, including information on the space intake portal. There are several training videos on there for you to go through that walks you through the portal. The new requirement request form that I mentioned is on there, and then also underutilized space identification portal and that release of space information is on there. Next, we have the occupancy and utilization guidelines site, and that has a lot of information on planning and reporting occupancy and utilization. And then you can quickly find the right person to talk to via that PBS point of contact website. I know today I mentioned the client strategy customer lead several times. So if you don't know who that is, you can go to that site and find out who has been assigned to your agency. You can also, as Eric mentioned in the beginning, revisit today's content and previous sessions through the CES information and resources link here in that YouTube channel. So please take advantage of these tools as you move forward with your projects. And then next slide, please. All right, so I know we have a team of people who've been answering questions in our Q&A pod. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Any questions we don't cover live, we will be answered after the session. So now I'm just going to turn it over, I think, Tasneem, to you to see what questions we want to answer live.
All right, great. Thanks, Carrie. We do have a good amount of questions. And just like Carrie said earlier, we're going to try to answer a lot of these live, but then we will have to wrap up some of them through a Q&A afterwards and really capture all of this as an FAQ. So you'll have answers to all of your questions. Like Carrie also said before, this is a process that we've just started to develop. It will be tweaked over time as we get more input from you all, as we start to go through each of these steps. And so for some of your questions, we may not have answers at this moment, but we will have them soon. And yes, you will get a PDF of the slide deck after this training. You'll get the recording too. All right, so the first question on here, I think is a really great one. So before the reorganization, my agency was working with GSA on a move to federal space for cost savings. The project was canceled during the new administration's DRP and RF period. My agency is still very much interested in moving for cost savings. How will this fall into the new prioritization? So I can kind of give you the initial feedback on that, and then if anybody on the team wants to add to it. But our goal is when we're doing prioritization, right, is to really partner with you. So in the prioritization process that Leslie was talking about earlier, there's a lot of intel that GSA is bringing to the table to try to determine what are the best opportunities and risks that are out there, like she said. But at the end of the day, we're not making any decisions without you as our customer agency at the table. And so if there are projects that you're looking to move forward that maybe we didn't initially either know about or we didn't see as potentially an opportunity, that is where those discussions would happen. And that would then filter into the programming, whether it's that fiscal year or into future fiscal years. But again, we want to hear from you. That's the whole point of us partnering and having those prioritization meetings with you at the table. Leslie, Carrie, anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm good. I think you answered it perfectly. Thank you.
All right. Okay, next question. And I think you just answered this, but just in case if people need to hear it again, is there a list of client strategists by agency and region?
We do have it by agency. We don't have, with our reorganization, we don't have regions anymore, but that is found on that resources page that I just covered.
Right, so you'll see your client strategist on that website that is on the slide deck that we'll share. And Valerie, if you want to even put that link into the chat, that might be helpful for everyone just to have in real time. But again, the idea is that you do have a client strategist that's directly working with your agency POCs, and then they're working with the rest of GSA to kind of really meet your mission needs. On that POC list, you'll also see POCs for facilities management and project management. All right, the next question is, can you provide an approximate timeline for each step? And I'll jump in here because I know this is actually kind of a harder question than what it may appear. So in the past, when we've done the planning process, we had a very clear timeline of when things were happening. Our goal is to go back to that. However, because like we said earlier in prioritization, we're moving away from just looking at expirations. So therefore, those dates, even though they're an indicator, they're not the only reason that we're going to be approaching you. So there's a timeline shift as to when we're going to be talking to you. Now, the idea is that we're talking to you annually, right? So you will have this consistent look at kind of what is coming up in the portfolio that we want to make changes to and how we want to work through kind of those programmatic areas. On a more granular version of this, right, how we're working through the portal, our feedback to you, the goal is that we are reaching back to you. As soon as we get the requirements through the portal, I believe it's a 5 to 10 day workaround that we would come back and give you a unique link. And then we're working on if it's a new request to the inventory, that we would do that, I think, on a biweekly basis. Carrie, is that what we're trying to drive? I know originally we were going to say monthly, but we're trying to do that quicker as well.
Yeah, we were going to be, if you have a new request, we were going to be sending those out monthly, but just based on everything being on hold and the amount of kind of urgent requests, we've now changed that to weekly. So every Thursday we're sending unique links on those. And then once you submit something, a client strategist should be reaching out to you to talk and confirm that we've received it prior to you getting the unique link. I also wanted to add, Tasneem, that Katrina did go through a lot of those different housing solutions. And so depending on the housing solution can really also impact the timeline. So if you were to backfill space that didn't need a lot of construction, that would take less time than a brand new lease. So those timelines also shift depending on the project and that housing strategy.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Carrie. Leslie?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was wondering too if part of this question was about the project lifecycle slide in a traditional non-prospectus lease type of project, if we could speak to those timelines, or if we're certain of those timelines anymore.
I think that's what Tasneem was talking through, is that we used to have those 36 month timeline for a new lease, if it was typically a new lease. That is potentially shifting. We're looking at what those timelines may end up being. We do want early engagement, which is why we're having these annual conversations. And then also those were based on an expiring lease being a trigger. So if we move into the soft term where we want to be, that may impact it as well. But typically a lease has been known to be about 36 months total from that entire life cycle. This, of course, there's various factors that could impact that as well.
Right. And our goal is trying to do things faster, right? So even for our leasing colleagues, like that is something that they're really trying to drive, is how can they make sure that the procurement timeline is shortening over time and coming up with the tools and resources to do that. So, but if you want just kind of an overall, I think 36 months is still kind of a good planning period, right? Like we would always want to at least get in front of you for new requirements where you're going to be moving or shifting your need at least 36 months ahead of time, just so we can do the right amount of planning. All right, the next question is, I accessed the portal on Monday. I received an email back saying that GSA received my request for new space. And it said that the team will now review. Just confirming, I will need to wait until the first week of the month. If I don't get the unique link by the first Thursday in April, should I reach out to my client strategist?
Yeah, so this question seems to be about if you have a new requirement. So not everything will have that two-step process, but if you had a new requirement request, an expansion, brand new, need, not an existing space, then you fill out that new requirement request form. It comes to us. You should be getting a unique link the Thursday of that week. The client strategist should be reaching out to you to confirm that we got it, to answer any clarification that maybe they might need, and to confirm that point of contact email is the right person who should get that link. If you don't hear, then yes, I would contact the client strategist that's on that point of contact, or if you know who it is, just to find out where it's at.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. And just a reminder to everybody on the call, this is a new process for you all, but it is also a new process internally for GSA. And so just kind of, understand that if you are not hearing from us, always reach out to your client strategist when it comes to requirements or planning. We're here to help you. This portal does not take the place of people. All right. Okay, so this is kind of related to this. So for continuing requirements with no change, when will GSA send the unique link? 1 year, 2 years before expiration, and who will receive the link?
So it kind of is twofold. So Leslie, you can maybe fill in some of the gap here as well. So we'll be having those annual conversations with you on that occupancy planning. And then we will determine, as I mentioned, I gave that a kind of hypothetical. let's say you had 100 projects that we were talking to you about, and 80 of them we are going to look at maybe programmatically. They probably maybe stay in place solutions. You don't have a lot of changes. And then we may have identified, let's say, the 20 that would be targeted. We would send you a link for those 20, and that would, we're working on the timeline for that, but that would typically be kind of similar to when we get those when we have those discussions. So you will see, I know we had talked about, Leslie had gone over the different triggers. There's some dispositions that we've been working with you on, and maybe we haven't actually gathered requirements on some of those from you. You'll start seeing some unique links for some of those shortly. I'm thinking probably within the next month, I think is our goal. So you'll start to see some of those unique links coming to you. We are trying to
Again,
get
just Carrie,
through.
just for this one, I think where they're saying where there's no change, if there's no change, you will not get a unique link, right? So if it's a
If
continuing
you're staying
change,
in place, yeah,
right,
no
if
change.
you don't have a change to your requirements, then we'll be going a different route, which is what Carrie had talked about earlier, where we'll be kind of collectively coming to you for those occupancies and working outside of the portal on those. And the idea is that you're not doing full requirements gathering on those types of occupancies.
Right.
Okay. All right, so this is a good question. By co-locating agencies, we have an opportunity to share common space rather than build underutilized or suboptimal spaces such as larger conference rooms, gyms, break rooms, and special space. If planning is limited to one agency at a time using the portal, how do departments manage potential multiple agency co-location and department-wide portfolio management? So that's a great question, and I'm actually going to take this. So our goal is to really have a holistic look at your portfolio, which is where that prioritization planning and that occupancy planning comes into play. So we're not looking at your occupancies through the portal, right? The portal is just a mechanism to get your needs once we've determined kind of a holistic strategy on your portfolio. But the idea is when we're having these annual conversations with you, we're looking at kind of your larger scope and starting to develop with you, where are places that you could potentially co-locate? Where can you have some shared spaces? And so our goal is exactly that, right? How do we make sure that we are partnering and coming up with solutions that maybe were not the traditional solutions of one occupancy, one lease, but really looking at you and your needs holistically and coming up with solutions that drive kind of that new way of thinking about space. And we'll have resources that come to the table to help us with a lot of those decisions and ideas. Okay. All right, another question. Do we have to complete the space intake portal submission in one session? Given that we'll have unique links, would we be able to go back and complete if not successful the first time? Sometimes we don't have all the information at once. And Carrie, I'll let you handle that one.
Yeah, so because it's a unique link that you get, you don't have to do it all in one session. You can come back to that unique link, and it should bring you right where you left off, so that you can then continue on. I mean, a best practice would be to gather all that information before you start submitting, putting it through, just so that, you know, there are sometimes system glitches, IT. If you refresh cookies or do something with your cache, it could mess that up. So a best practice would be to try to do it that way, but it is set up so that if you have that unique link, you can go back to it.
Perfect. Thanks, Carrie. All right, switching gears, we have some space match questions on here. the first question in here, it says, it sounds like GSA will be determining whether this is space available for space sharing at the requirements intake portal. Is that correct? And I think to go along with it, does the implementation of the portal replace space match altogether?
I was coughing, so hopefully I got the whole question there. So the new request form. Do you want to try to go
I can
first?
ask you again. Yeah,
Okay.
no, I was just going to ask you if you want me to just
Thank
restate
you.
it.
Yeah, so I'm getting
no.
over a cold. I was
Yes,
coughing.
yes. No, I hear you. Okay, so it sounds like GSA will be determining whether this is a space. So I'm assuming when they put the request in, they will be determining whether this is a space available for space sharing at the requirements intake portal. Is that correct? And then I think the other part of it too is, does the implementation of the portal replace space match altogether?
Right. I'll start with the second part first. It does not replace Space Match. Space Match is a housing solution. It's a program, it's a mechanism for sharing space within controlled, occupancies. So it doesn't replace that. What it replaces is that space intake portal that was originally set up just for space. Sorry, I said space intake portal. I meant space match portal that had been set up. That went away, and now when we receive your requirements, if you don't have shared space restrictions, if you have less than 20 seats, it's office space. It's not highly specialized. And there's supply available. I know we talked a lot about we need to have supply available. It could be a housing solution through Space Match that we would go to you and recommend. So that is just one of those housing solutions. I hope I answered that, but if anyone wants to add on to that, that's on the call, please feel free. All right.
No, I think that's good. I think, at the end of the day, just like you said, Carrie, Space Match is still a solution, right? We're taking everything through the intake portal just to make sure that we're looking at things together. And I think the other question was, how do we determine if something is a space sharing solution or if it's space that you're giving us that's underutilized could be used for space sharing solutions? Those are all right. We still have discussions with you as our agency. We wouldn't be making these decisions in a vacuum. And so again, the portal is a way for us to get information. The portal does not make the decisions. We will with you as our partners. Okay. All right. Are there plans to change the billing of space sharing or space match locations? For instance, right now, I believe all space match charges are just billed to a newly created OA with no breakdown or details. Will this be different in space sharing? How we do our MOUs is very much curated by OMB and in our office of OCFO, so our CFO agency or CFO business line. Lauren, I believe you're on here if you want to try to answer this question.
Sorry, I was trying to come off mute. No, we don't anticipate changes to our billing structure at this time. The change is only to how we're intaking the requests.
Perfect. Thank you. Just going through these questions.
While you're going through those questions, Tasneem,
Sure.
I do see in the chat, and thank you, Valerie, for keeping people honest. If you have questions for our subject matter experts, please use the Q&A pod. You might have to expand the more option on the bottom of your screen to do so. That's where we're corralling all these questions. So the ones that we can't get to in the time here, we'll be able to export them and answer them after the fact. So I just want to remind everybody to put your questions in the Q&A pod and not the chat pane. Thank you.
Another question on here. So will GSA no longer be doing full and open for simplified lease acquisitions that have a stay in place? We will still be doing, I mean, we will be doing the procurement activity that is needed based on the requirement for that action. So we don't really have anyone here to talk about procurement exactly, but we'll come back on the FAQs and come up with the right answer for that. So just wanted to make sure we at least covered it, but we don't have the right person for that answer right now. And I think we've hit most of the questions. There's things in chat, we can bring them over.
I didn't look to see in chat, but I did just kind of peruse some of the questions, and I know that the requirements cheat sheet, people were asking for a link to that. It is on the GSA.gov portfolio planning, and then you can get to the space intake portal. But I don't know if could someone on the team just go ahead and put that in the chat so that it's easily accessible and they can go to the site where the link is. So we'll try to put that in the chat so you have it. But it is through our website, you can find a lot of those resources that I mentioned today.
Yeah. And then I think we'll take one more question and then I think we can wrap up. This is an important one. Can agencies schedule to have an internal discussion with a PBS team member to offer more intimate engagement sessions? I think I can say a resounding yes, but Carrie or Leslie, if you want to answer this question.
Are we talking about, I mean, yeah, if you go to your client strategy lead and want to have a more, intimate engagement, questions and answers, we are, happy to do that. I'm assuming maybe you mean around this and our process. And then with occupancy planning, Leslie, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. I think for probably all the topics we talked about today, like we are fast and furiously trying to equip our client strategists with tools and resources to have more in-depth conversations, since today was just an overview. But yeah, you will be hearing from your client strategist, and feel free to reach out directly to them as well with any specific questions. And if I'm like a national client lead as well, so if I had a question that I couldn't answer, I would bring one of our presenters or another SME to that next meeting to try to get an answer for you.
Yeah, we understand that this is a lot of information that we're sharing. Like I said, it's new for us, it's new for you. And when we've done this in the past, anytime there's new processes or initiatives, our goal is to meet with you as much as needed to make sure that these processes are, kind of embedded within your own processes, but also understood and then fully engaged. So again, if you have questions, like our client strategists are around for you to come to. If you feel unsure about the portal, come to us. Don't feel like you can't come to GSA to get your questions answered. We're here to partner. We're here to kind of be in it with you. I think at the end of the day, our goal is the same as yours, right? How can we make our portfolio more efficient, optimize kind of the way that we use our space, and make sure that the people that sit in it have their needs met so they can do the work that we need to do to get our missions across. So with that said, I'll give it back to Eric, but we will follow up with Q&A through an FAQ. So everything that we answered live, plus anything that we did not answer. Eric?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Tasneem. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you to Katrina and Leslie for that presentation. And thanks to all of you, our customer audience members today. We are going to wrap up, but please don't drop, because we do have a couple of poll questions that we want to ask here. And that is going to be a quick look back at the presentation and a quick look forward. So we'll give a moment for the poll questions to come out. All right. So if you're able to see the pop-up on your screen, you can answer right on the screen. I understand some folks may not be able to, so you can put your answer in the chat. I will encourage that this time. And so what we are asking here is we want to know that after today's presentation, and I accidentally closed the poll question. So I hope that everybody is able to look at it, and I have it right here. So after today's session, do you understand the process of making space requests or notifying GSA of excess or underutilized space? And your choices are, I understand the process and I'm ready to plan my portfolio. I understand, but could use a little more information to feel comfortable. And I'm not sure and would like additional training. So we'd love to know. That will help us kind of refine our processes moving forward. If you select the first option, you understand and you're ready to go, great. If you need a little more help, I would direct you to that space intake portal page that is linked in the chat. It will be in the resources of this PDF slide deck, because we do have guided training sessions that can help you kind of step by step through the process. And I think Carrie would really appreciate it if you all watched her wonderful videos. And if you're still not sure, you still want additional training, that's guide offerings moving forward. But also, as I've mentioned before, we are going to send out the link to this video recording as well as post it on our website. So you will be able to go back and reference it. The second poll question moving forward, we want to know what topics are of most interest to you to help us plan and schedule. We have a couple of thoughts here: leasing, construction and project management, reimbursable services, RWAs, building operations, tenant services, or other. And you can select as many of those as you want. And if you select other, you do have the option to write in your topic below, and we will take stock of those as we start planning future sessions. So we'll leave that poll up for a little bit so you can give some thought to it. But once again, as we close out, I do want to thank all of our subject matter experts and presenters, both those in front of the camera and behind the scenes today. And again, thanks to all of our customers for taking time out of your day to come and spend with us. So as I mentioned earlier, and it's up on your screen, we are plotting out the next couple client enrichment series sessions. The next one that we have planned is April 15th with some folks from our Office of Engineering, and it is titled Meeting the Needs of Workplace in an Evolving Environment. Again, that's Wednesday, April 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern. And so that is, you can register for that already. That link, which will be sent out to you after the meeting today, will take you right to the registration page, and it will go up on our Client Enrichment Series website. And that website, once again, www.gsa.gov/CES. That's where we post registration links for sessions. That's where we post archived materials from previous sessions, including this. So please be on the lookout for an email from the team later today with some additional information, including the PDF slides of the deck, as well as information about how to access the recording. So one more time, I want to thank everybody for coming, reminding everybody that the goal of the Client Enrichment Series is to engage our audience in workplace topics that contribute to your mission success and to the efficient management of your real estate and workplace programs. Thank you again for the time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.